They said, no, we're waiting for the pilot. And I said, I am the pilot. And do you know, they didn't believe me. They actually went inside the aeroplane and searched it to try and find a pilot. But of course, there was none, so they eventually took me to the control tower, and everybody was flabbergasted that a little girl like me could fly these big airplanes all by oneself.
The Hamble girls flew daily over the Solent. In 1944, this meant they were uniquely amongst the few who knew the invasion of Europe was about to take place.
You took off from Hamble and you could see Southampton Water, really. And so you had a very good view. And it just got more and more ships of all types.
I was flying over it, and I thought, well, how extraordinary. All those ships, and it was just a mass. You could have walked from one side to the other on the ships. The next morning, I flew over, and there was not a single ship to be seen anywhere. They'd all gone off in the night.
The Hamble River was absolutely covered in little boats. And then you woke up one morning and they'd all gone. And you realized D-Day is happening. I was given a Spitfire to fly from somewhere down there up to Oxford, and I think I wept all the way. I felt very sad because of all my friends who weren't able to join in it.
Freydis Sharland lost 7 cousins in the war, and her brother Derek. Derek had forewarned her of the loss she would endure, and of his own death.
It was very typical of him trying to soften the blow for me, really, because he could see how upset I was by losing such dear friends, and he wanted to prepare me for the awful things that were going to happen. And he did, really, like that. I thought it was very kind of him, you know, to make the effort to tell me what he'd thought about.
Molly Rose's husband, Bernard, was a tank commander on D-Day.
He was in the first wave of tanks to go in at Arromanches, and 7 days later, our Churchill tanks were no match for the German Tigers, and his tank was blown up. And the first thing I got down at Hamble was a letter saying that no way could anyone have got out of it. And that was really a very nasty letter to arrive.
But Molly couldn't accept that Bernard was dead.
I felt I would know if anything had happened to Bernard, and I felt he was all right. But it was very, it helped me enormously to feel that.
Following the wartime slogan, "Keep calm and carry on," Molly decided to continue flying.
It was a tremendous help during that period to have my own concerns to worry about. You know, it was very character forming, I think. And then about 2 months later, I got a card from him from Brunswick, from the POW camp there, saying that, you know, he hadn't been damaged, he was all right, and that there he was.
Bernard survived his experience as a POW. He and Molly remained together until Bernard's death in 1996. After D-Day, ATA girls were initially banned from ferrying planes to the continent, but one girl was to break that rule.
The trailblazer who ensured that women would fly to Northern Europe was Diana Bonato Walker. Who else? She was by this time married to Derek Walker, Wing Commander Derek Walker, who was stationed with the Allied headquarters in Brussels and arranged for his commanding officer to provide a letter allowing him to bring his newlywed wife to Brussels. It was vague as to whether she would be flying her own Spitfire, but she was, and they flew wingtip to wingtip out over the White Cliffs of Dover in October 1944. And then the Mail got wind of this, the Daily Mail, and said that Derek Walker had taken his wife to Brussels for a honeymoon, and he was docked 3 months' pay. So that might have at least paid for the fuel.
Diana's honeymoon was short-lived.
This is a piece of Derek Walker's Mustang 5, in which he crashed on November the 14th, 1945, and was killed.
Diana, the epitome of the fun-loving ATA girl, remained single and devoted to flying for the rest of her life. By 1945, the Allies had achieved total dominance in the air. Fewer planes needed to be delivered. As war ended, the ATA was wound down.
I was very wicked. I never wanted the war to end so that I could go on and on and on. Whenever possible, I get near enough to pat a Spitfire and a Hurricane and look into it too, and still amazed at how tiny the cockpit is. I wonder how I did it. But then I was young at the time.
For many, it was the end of the best years of their lives.
The ATA was the main thing in my life, I'm sure. It was difficult to get into, and a lot of hard work to get going in it, and yes, I was sad to leave it. The best part of my life, I'm sure.
For Pauline Gower, heading the women's section was to be the achievement of her life. She died in childbirth in 1947. Lettice Curtis, the most accomplished of the women flyers, dreamt of becoming an airline pilot. But all the demobbed RAF boys put an end to that.
I think she dreaded whatever was to come. She remained unmarried except to aviation. She worked for the Fairey Aircraft Company, but she was never a civilian pilot, and there was never any question that opportunity would come along. One of the pilots, Jackie Soror, did become Britain's first commercial airline pilot. Was it BOAC to Paris or New York? No, it was from Bristol to the Channel Islands, I think. And she was constantly mistaken for a flight attendant anyway.
The unique moment when women flyers almost gained equality with their male counterparts soon disappeared.
For women to be flying the whole range of aeroplanes, from ancient biplanes to super fast Spitfires and lumbering great Lancasters, is just unbelievable stuff.
It could never, never happen again, where girls could fly all these military aeroplanes without any aids whatsoever, and go from one aeroplane to another without any instruction, because I flew 76 types. My days of glamour have gone now. I'm just trying to get safely through old age.
Celebrating 75 years of the Spitfire tonight, John Sargent charts the story of the plane and the people who gave it its soul at 8:45. After an hour of classic wartime